Yellowstone National Park is known for its wildlife, its geysers, and yes, that big supervolcano underneath it all. Now in the past, this behemoth has produced some of the largest eruptions in Earth's history, each with catastrophic consequences for life on the planet. But don't worry, experts say another one of these large eruptions isn't going to happen anytime soon. However, scientists still expect some smaller explosions in the near future, so here's what we know about what's next for Yellowstone. The Yellowstone Supervolcano isn't actually one volcano, but a collection of 3 calderas or volcanic craters. Over millions of years, these calderas have grown to be nearly 43 by 28 miles across. And at a depth of 60 miles below the park, they form the Yellowstone caldera. The magma chamber beneath it all extends even deeper. This reservoir of molten rock could be anywhere between 100 and 200 miles below the surface. While all these technical terms might sound scary, it helps to know that Yellowstone is currently in a dormant period. In other words, it's not erupting and doesn't appear to be preparing to erupt anytime soon. In fact, the most recent eruption happened about 640,000 years ago, which is actually quite young on a geologic timescale. That said, Yellowstone does experience periods of quiescence like the one we're currently in, and during them, the magma chamber refills with magma before the next eruption. Experts think this next eruption will come from the northeast corner of the supervolcano. There's already evidence of this in the shape of the land above the magma chamber. Scientists are watching a particular area closely. It's called the Yellowstone Caldera's Uplifted Block, or YCAB for short. This dome-shaped piece of land sits above where researchers believe the next eruption will occur. Currently, it spans about 27 square miles, but scientists say it could inflate to as much as 50 square miles before an eruption happens. Fortunately, the entire area sits within Yellowstone National Park, meaning there are no cities or towns nearby. But if it did blow up tomorrow, experts say the damage would still be considerable. In the immediate vicinity, an eruption at YCAB would affect an area roughly the size of Los Angeles. The blast radius would extend 25 to 50 miles from the epicenter, and the explosion itself would register as a 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI. That makes it more explosive than the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption in Washington state and the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption in the Philippines. Both of those registered as 6 on the index. At a level 7, the blast would flatten trees and obliterate anything in its path. Pyroclastic flows and lahars, which are volcanic mudslides, would also race down river valleys. These events would happen so quickly that people wouldn't have time to react. Eruptions of this scale usually begin with a series of smaller earthquakes and increased gas emissions. But because of the depths involved in this kind of eruption, the warning signs might not be visible until the blast happens. Even without warning, though, residents of nearby cities and towns would likely be able to find shelter in their homes or buildings. For those caught outside the blast radius, though, the air would become thick with ash. So while an eruption would certainly be devastating in the surrounding areas, most of the damage would come from the ash. Volcanic ash consists of pulverized rock and other materials ejected from the volcano. During an eruption, it gets carried far away from the volcano by winds, and depending on the eruption's magnitude, it can travel thousands of miles. When it lands, volcanic ash blankets the landscape, burying everything in sight. Ash particles are abrasive and sharp, so when they build up, they can cause major problems for both people and the environment. Breathing it in can irritate your lungs, especially if you have asthma or other respiratory issues. Ash also has a way of making its way into waterways and poisoning fish and other aquatic animals. It can kill vegetation too, either by smothering plants under a thick layer or by filtering out sunlight and disrupting photosynthesis. Humans can protect themselves against ash by staying indoors and wearing protective gear like N95 masks. Some communities might also choose to implement emergency measures such as closing schools and businesses. But after an eruption, cleanup crews will need to clear the ash to restore order to the landscape. They may use specialized vacuum cleaners or even dump trucks to remove it. But the effects of volcanic ash don't end there. A large eruption at Yellowstone would send ash into the atmosphere. Here, it would mix with water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other substances to form a layer of sulfate aerosols. This layer would reflect and absorb incoming sunlight, which would trigger a volcanic winter. Essentially, the sun's rays would bounce back into space, resulting in cooler temperatures on the Earth's surface. In the winter of 1815, for example, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted and created a year without a summer. The following year was the coldest on record in Europe, with average temperatures dropping as much as 7 degrees Celsius below normal. Summer temperatures in some parts of North America were also 10 degrees below average. Crops failed and food shortages became widespread. More than 80,000 Europeans died of starvation and related illnesses. So a similar situation could play out if the Yellowstone Supervolcano were to blow today. To make matters worse, the impacts of a volcanic winter could last longer than you might think. During the winter of 1816, for example, cold temperatures persisted well into the following spring. In the northern hemisphere, June and July were colder than December and January. Not only would this weather be unusual, but it would also be dangerous. After all, crops need warm temperatures to grow, and the failure of crops could have devastating global effects. Without enough food to eat, people would likely face starvation, and in the absence of effective vaccines and antibiotics, disease would run rampant. So in the end, an eruption of the Yellowstone Supervolcano could claim millions of lives. Fortunately for us, geologists say that such an eruption isn't on the horizon. Right now, the Yellowstone Supervolcano is in a dormant phase that will likely last thousands of years. But that doesn't mean it won't experience any activity. Minor eruptions and earthquakes are somewhat common during these periods, and scientists have recently detected some seismic activity. Between 1985 and 1986, the USGS recorded more than 3,000 small earthquakes around Yellowstone. Most were located along the northwest and southern borders of the park, and they ranged in magnitude from 2.5 to 3.9. While these quakes didn't cause any damage or pose any danger to the public, they were enough to raise the concerns of local officials. At the time, they feared the possibility of a massive eruption and the impact it would have on the region. However, researchers reassured them that these minor earthquakes were relatively normal for the area. Still, they knew there was something else happening under the surface. To get to the bottom of it, they began monitoring the area using a network of 23 continuously recording seismographs. This monitoring system, called the Yellowstone Seismic Network or YSN, continues to operate today, and it plays an integral role in tracking Yellowstone's seismic activity. Thanks to the YSN, scientists can detect small earthquakes as they happen. They can also measure changes in the shape of the ground and monitor the frequency and strength of small steam explosions. Using this data, they can identify patterns and make predictions about what might happen next. For instance, the Yellowstone Supervolcano experiences regular steam explosions at various locations throughout the park, the most famous ones probably being the geysers. But steam explosions also happen at places like Black Sand Basin and Dragon's Mouth. While these sites aren't as tourist-friendly as Old Faithful, they still draw crowds who want to see the power of nature on display. Steam explosions happen when hot water trapped underground turns to steam and expands. The pressure from the steam can be intense, especially when it encounters a blockage in its path. As the pressure builds, it eventually forces its way through whatever's in its path. This results in a sudden burst of energy that ejects boiling water and steam from the ground. Sometimes this happens in a predictable fashion, like at Old Faithful, where the water bursts up to 170 feet into the air every 60 to 100 minutes. At other times, the explosions are less predictable, like at Black Sand Basin, where the water boils violently and unpredictably. Fortunately, these steam explosions are nowhere near as dangerous as an actual eruption. If anything, they're a reminder of the geothermal activity happening beneath our feet. So, when exactly should we expect the next steam explosion, earthquake, or eruption at Yellowstone? Well, it's impossible to say for sure, but scientists are hopeful that it won't be anytime soon. In fact, the most recent projections suggest that there's only a 1% chance of a large eruption over the next 1,000 years. That being said, there's no way to completely rule out the possibility of a large eruption in our lifetimes. So it's important to continue monitoring Yellowstone's activity and taking steps to mitigate any potential damage. By doing so, we can ensure that everyone is prepared in the event of an eruption and that we can minimize the impact on people and the environment. Yellowstone National Park is home to some of the most incredible natural wonders in the world. From its towering geysers to its bubbling mud pots, it's a place where visitors can experience the raw power of nature up close and personal. But beneath this seemingly tranquil landscape lies a supervolcano that has the potential to unleash catastrophic destruction on a moment's notice. As we continue to explore and learn more about this magnificent park, it's essential that we also take the necessary precautions to protect ourselves from the dangers that lurk beneath the surface. With proper planning and preparation, we can all enjoy the breathtaking beauty of Yellowstone while staying safe from harm.